To our top story today, marking 100 years since an armistice agreement was signed to end World War I. South Africa entered the arena with over 200,000 soldiers siding with the Allied forces. It's estimated over 12,000 people, South Africans, were killed. Johannesburg Mayor Herman Mashaba led the centenary commemorations at the Cenotaph War Monument in Johannesburg's CBD. And our reporter Samkele Maseko was there. Samkele, a rather somber afternoon in the Johannesburg CBD.
Yes, indeed, Michelle, there was a very somber afternoon here in the Joburg CBD. There were no speeches here by the Johannesburg Executive Mayor Herman Mashaba. It was just those who are relatives of those who survived World War I, World War II, and the liberation struggle, who came here to commemorate all the wars that had taken place. We spoke to the Legion's National President, George, whom I'm just going to throw to his bite now, who speaks about how many South African soldiers are laid from far from their homeland, which is South Africa and Africa. Some are even laid to rest as far as Europe. Let's just listen to what George had to say.
The cenotaph, a lot of people don't understand. Most of our soldiers that died were buried other places in the world. So the loved ones haven't got a gravestone to go to actually pay their respects. So that's what the cenotaph is all about, is that the families and family members can actually come together and pay their respects to the gravesite of all of the guys that are actually buried overseas. So that includes the guys of the Cape Corps, and especially the Battle of the Square Hill, because that's where the guys fought a very difficult battle, and they held that ground as well. Then you've also got SS Mendi. Those guys were going to help the soldiers with the Labour Corps, etc. And they'd never even been in a boat, never mind been in the sea. And then suddenly they get the Darrow goes into it and crashes it. And these guys then went into icy water 5 o'clock in the morning and sank. And a lot of them didn't know how to swim as well. So this is really for all wars. So we rededicated the cenotaph, not only for the First World War, Second World War, Korea, the liberation struggle, including the border war. So it's for everybody, including over 100 soldiers we've now lost so far from the SANDF in training and also in peacekeeping as well. So this is for all.
Now, Samkele, we heard there from Godfrey Giles, the SA Legion of Military Veterans, speaking about the South Africans who have been laid to rest in foreign shores. We heard from our correspondent in Paris earlier, who spoke of a special cemetery or a special place where South Africans who died in the war were commemorated, and how for many years the black South African soldiers who had died in World War I had not been recognized with their names, but at some point that was corrected and all of their names are there. 13,000 South Africans, both white and black, finally being recognized. Such an important point of recognition for their surviving families.
Yes, indeed, Marcel. Thanks for the correction. That was indeed Godfrey instead of George. I had mistakenly called him George. Yes, indeed, it is a huge milestone for those soldiers who had not yet been recognized by having their names recognized on the official tombstones or memorial sites of these struggle stalwarts or soldiers who died, particularly going up to or during World War I, World War II, and all those other wars that have taken place, and the liberation struggle, particularly those who are abroad. For instance, should remember when the 100th anniversary of the SS Mendi was commemorated last year, when our colleague Tula Sizwe was in Great Britain for that commemoration. To remember how that also unfolded. You look at what has transpired today in Paris, where world leaders such as the United States, American President Donald Trump, Russian President Vladimir Putin, and the French President Emmanuel Macron, where the celebration was taking place in France today, spoke about the consciousness of world leaders and presidents, saying that they must take responsibility for what happens and at all costs look after their soldiers and look after their people. For instance, I'll go back to when we spoke to Godfrey here, when he said that wars are not started by soldiers, but wars are started by politicians. So it is politicians who have to avoid wars at all costs, because they are the ones who pull the final trigger or make the final decision of when countries go to war. You look at what transpired during World War I when Germany surrendered. You look at also what happened during World War II, and you look at the liberation struggle in South Africa during those years when those who were in the organizations such as the Azanian People's Movement, such as those who were in the PAC, such as those who were in the ANC, and other movements such as the Black Consciousness Movement were fighting for the liberation in Africa. So this commemoration here today was basically not only commemorating World War I, but commemorating all the wars that have taken place, but also being cognizant of the liberation struggle of South Africans, but also going back to issues such as those military wings that were formed during the apartheid era, such as the Cape Corps that was also spoken about here. You look at all those formations that were there then and how that evolved to the liberation struggle in South Africa.
Well, we thank you for your time. Samkele Moseko reporting to us live from the Johannesburg